we'll call this meeting to order. So should we do the roll call?
Yes. Ms. Acevedo.
Here.
Commissioner Douglas.
Here.
Mr.
Sorry,
Gunn.
here in Royal Oak.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Jennifer, you in Royal Oak?
Thank you for the reminder. Yes, in Royal Oak, Michigan.
Mr. Guntina.
Here in Royal Oak.
Ms. Hartwig.
Here in Royal Oak.
Ms. Herzog.
Here in Royal Oak.
Ms. Lemmy. Here. Mr. Long. Not here. Mr. Marcelletti.
Here in Royal Oak.
Ms. McMahon is not here. Mr. Regan.
Here in Royal Oak.
Mr. Sarpalis.
Present in Royal Oak.
And Mr. Vile.
Here in Royal Oak.
Yeah.
Okay, and then on to our next item is the approval of the February 24th, today's agenda. I just want to make one note that we don't have the January 27th meeting minutes. So we're going to take that off. That's number 6. And we'll just put that onto our next meeting agenda. We'll approve both. So is there a motion with that edit for the agenda?
So
Or if there's
moved.
anyone, okay, a second?
Second.
All right. And for the roll call, Ms. Acevedo.
Aye.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Mr. Guntina.
Yes.
Ms. Hartwig.
Aye.
Ms. Herzog. Mr. Marcelletti.
Aye.
Mr. Regan.
Aye.
Mr. Sarpalis.
Yes.
Mr. Vile.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I put in the email that one of our responsibilities is to also serve as the Water Systems Advisory Council. And so now we will be moving into that meeting.
Yep.
We have to, is there a special way of saying that, or we can just start that?
We can go to, so we will, do we need a roll call vote to commence that meeting? Yes, so we will take a roll call vote to commence that meeting of the Water System Advisory Council.
And before you do that, I see Pam's in the attendees.
Ah. All right, she's on her way in.
Sorry, I'm late. Just got in
Oh,
from the
okay.
office.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So we were just on the verge of doing a roll call vote to commence the Water System Advisory Council meeting. Is there any discussion? Otherwise, we'll go into the vote. Ms. Acevedo,
Aye.
Commissioner Douglas,
Yes.
Mr. Guntina,
Yes.
Ms. Hartwig,
Yes.
Ms. Herzog,
Yes.
Ms. Lemmy,
Yes.
Mr. Marcelletti,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Sarpalis,
Aye.
and Mr. Vile.
Yes.
All right. So yes, as you know, we are required by state law to have this council meeting at least once a year. And we'll go over kind of what our mission is on that briefly, but we met once last year. And as Amanda had noted, there's nothing that precludes us from meeting more frequently, even on the fly at one meeting, say, hey, let's have one of these at our subsequent meeting. So we can do that at any point, but this is to fulfill our requirement for this year. And just as a quick reminder, kind of what the charge for this group is, and I'm going to read through, if you haven't seen it, the state does have a guidance document on what we're supposed to do, or kind of generally what our focus should be. And number one, that's to develop plans for continuing public awareness about lead in drinking water, even when there's not a lead action level exceedance. And then another charge is to review some of the state provided literature that comes out of the State Advisory Council. And that we'll include that on a future agenda where we actually have a packet of some of their materials. But I think what they're looking for is to make sure that it's readable, that it's understandable, to the residents. And that differs from city to city. So they want that to be appropriate and those sort of be reviewed and take any kind of input on those. Also, the group is to advise and consult with the water supplier on the development of appropriate plans for remediation and public education if a lead action level exceedance occurs. The last time around, I think we sort of did a lot of that outside of the scope of meeting because this rule was just being implemented. And thankfully, we haven't had an exceedance since. But then also to advise and consult on efforts to replace private lead service lines at locations where we have been declined access. So we haven't encountered that, but I will certainly bring that to the group. And if we do, and maybe even in advance of that, come up with some sort of a plan on how we might want to urge people to do that. Then we assist in the transparency of all data and documents related to lead in the water in the supply service area, and to collaborate with community groups to ensure that everyone's involved in the efforts to educate the community. So some of those are specific, some of them are a little bit more broad, but we're going to address some of those here today. In particular, some of the transparency, I'm going to talk about where we stand on some of our efforts. So, without any questions on that guidance, I just wanted to make sure, just for everyone's sake, that we reviewed that before we continue.
Can you tell me where we would find this guidance document? Is it on Eagle's website?
Yes, it is. Yep. And if you search on that, just Community Water Council Guidance, Community Water Advisory Council Guidance.
And I believe if you, in the email I sent to the group, if you click on that link and scroll to the bottom, it'll be there too.
All right, thanks, Amanda.
And you know what, this we can post as well. I'll get into some of the web stuff that we're doing later, but this can be posted there as well. So our next order of business really at first is to elect officers. If last time around we chose to just keep the same officers that we use for the EAB, I would recommend doing that again unless there's some other ideas about that.
I agree.
Okay, so in that case, we would just require a motion to, I don't know how you want to word that. Well, it's you, Amanda?
So it's me, Ken, and Amanda.
That's right.
Oh.
Oh, they're definitely getting signed up. Here's our nomination.
I'll let them know.
Okay,
Give them more work, give them more work.
So is there a motion that the chair of the Water Systems Advisory Council would be me, the vice chair would be Ken, and the secretary would be Amanda?
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, great.
all right, without discussion, we will call for the vote. Ms. Acevedo,
Yes,
Commissioner Douglas,
Yes.
Mr. Guntina,
Yes.
Ms. Hartwig,
Yes.
Ms. Herzog,
Yes.
Ms. Lemmy,
Yes.
Mr. Marcelletti,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Sarpalis,
Yes.
and Mr. Vile.
Yes.
Hey, we have officers. So next on the agenda for this meeting is the water system report. I'm going to drone for a minute, and so if you get bored, feel free to interrupt me, but I want to go over some information here. So there's, in regard to the lead and copper monitoring, which is one of our many things that we do related to this, we submitted our most recent round of results on the 6th of January. We have yet to hear back from the state. They usually take it and analyze the numbers and give us a final word on that, along with further instruction on what other kind of testing we have to do. We have not received that yet, but by my calculation, we were at 13 parts per billion as the 90th percentile from the places we've tested. So as you recall, the first round early on was 23 parts per billion. The last one was 15, which did not constitute an exceedance. And then we've gone further down from there, at least by my math. So we'll see what the state says, but things are looking pretty good. So that's that. We will be beginning a new round as soon as we get instruction on that. Normally we would roll right into it, but we don't have standing orders to do it. So we'll wait for that and get going on that as soon as we get the word. In terms of service line replacement, that's my big thing that of course we want to find these, and I'll get into the inventory in a minute, but in terms of replacement, we're trying to be aggressive about it wherever we find them. So in total, since we were obligated to do that, we replaced about 140 services. That was about 111 last year in the calendar year 2020. This year so far, we've done almost 30. And I'll get into how we were approaching those. But we're maintaining that still that average of about 7% a year, or about 100. Technically, that number could go down, being that we're not in an action level exceedance, but we're not going to operate that way. I think 100 is going to be our goal moving forward, no matter what. And I'm really confident we'll do a lot more than that. And I'm sure there's will for the funding from commission as well, should we need that. And that, let's see. Where am I? Yeah, so what we've done now is we've finally implemented the approach with the SACWA contractor, where we're doing these in batches quarterly. We try to do about 30 on average to get a good project, to make it cost efficient, to have the group come in and knock all these out at once. So we're doing that. We just got done with our last round, and we're collecting addresses for new ones. I'll get into that in a minute, how we're gonna need some help with some of that. But this approach worked really well. It was amazing how fast they made these replacements, even these 30, it took about a week. So we're doing well in that. We also are tasked with inventorying our materials in our water system to determine what's lead, what's not. And I've got some numbers. We've come a long way on that as well. So for example, as of the end of last September, we submitted a revised preliminary distribution materials inventory. And from that, among the category of unknown, which could be copper, could be lead, could be galvanized, but we weren't sure, we had almost 16,000 locations that we didn't know. So we've been crunching on it. We've had somebody on staff working on it. And we've got that number down from almost 16,000 to just a little under 6,000 locations that we're still trying to get information on. And we're doing that in a combination of ways. As we're doing this work, and people are sort of coming out of the woodwork saying, I want a replacement, we're finding some. Then also, we are starting to see a trend where some of these might be, it's not full neighborhoods, we have yet to discover that, but we do see some trends. And so we found some neighborhoods that haven't had water main work done in a while, and we're going to be putting door hangers on there to encourage our guys to get in to see it, to actually see what's inside, and inventory those. I have also requested, and I reported this last time, we requested $1 million from the Drinking Water Asset Management Grant that the state is offering. We wanted to use that to offset some costs for some asset management software that will help us in this and other things, along with some field equipment. And then the bulk majority of it, about 900,000 of it, we asked to be used for hydro excavating work, such that where there's materials on the public side of the water service line and we don't know what they are, we can access them relatively easily without having to excavate and create all kinds of additional cost and mess and everything else. And so we expect to hear an award for that coming up soon. By March 15th, we're supposed to know, on or before. I haven't heard anything yet, but I'm waiting anxiously. Apparently there was really big interest in it at the state level, so they're probably swamped. And so it's hard to tell how we'll fare. In any case, if we don't, we'll go for it again. And that work, regardless of that grant, will continue. And then another item on the agenda was and feel free to slow me down at any point if you want, but the lead-related communication summary. Since our lead action level exceedance in 2019, we've included summary language in all of our quarterly insight magazines. We have now a a lead service line replacement program application online, which has some information, and I'm going to show you guys that in a minute. We have slides on WROK that play. We have a big section on the website with frequently asked questions. We also communicate to the residents about the risks of lead through our notification letters. So if they participate in our testing program, everybody gets their results in addition with some other informational material, regardless of what their results were at those individual locations. And then also, as we're doing this inventory work, we come across some of these locations, and we then have a form letter that we send to those homes to make the homeowner aware that we've identified the part of this as lead and here's what you can do about it. So that's the big part of our communication strategy on that. I'm gonna share my screen really quick just to show you, hang on here. We've recently redone the website, the skin on it. So we wanted to make some structural changes to make the lead stuff kind of more in your face on the public services page. But we stopped short of doing that because when they were transitioning to the new skin, it could really screw up that transition if you actually change the structure of the site too. But that got completed about a week or so ago. So Judy Davids and I are working on restructuring some of this and making it better. So your input on that would be helpful as we do that. But in the meantime, we share this screen. All right. Can you see? So can you see me on my web browser?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So if you navigate now to romy.gov/get the lead out, it takes you to a page that briefly describes our lead service line replacement program. But more importantly, well, it gives a link here as well to that NPR test that helps people identify it on their own. We're encouraging people to do to have plumbers if they're not sure, identify what it is. Our team, when we're in houses replacing meters, we'll always check to the extent that we can. There's some one-offs, we'll go in and check. We're doing this focused program in a couple of neighborhoods. We're able to do that, but a lot of times people will call and just kind of want us to come out on demand, and that's a difficult task for us when we're trying to schedule things. So we encourage people to get a plumber or do this test. But after that, they can review this access agreement, which we've made available online. And it's a legit document. This is the thing that would stop us up from scheduling the actual replacement work. And there's some terms, and you guys can go to that website on your own if you'd like to look at some of those terms, but they would basically agree to this. This is the same one the engineering department used. And once we have those, they're submitted to us, we collect it. And when we get a critical mass, about 30, we'll build a program. If we have really, really good turnout, it might be such the case that we have to, sort of make choices, try to do it by geography maybe. But in any case, I would really want to start pushing that out. That just went live today. And so Judy's going to push that out, and hopefully we get some really good information from that. That really helps our inventory effort as well, because there's stuff out there we don't know at all. And so it all works together to help us in our goal. So that was a lot. That was the bulk of my water system report. Let's say before we move on to public comment, I'm willing to answer any questions.
Thanks, Aaron. I think Paul has his hand raised there.
Well,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
you can go, Andrew, go ahead.
The
All right.
chair handles all disputes.
Okay. I thought Paul was putting his hand up there for a second. So I had just 3 questions related to this. So can people see, you said there's still about 6,000 lines that we don't know the composition of. Can people find out if the city doesn't know in any sort of public way what their line is? That was one of my questions. My second question was, what is the impact on water rates, if any, for the city? And then my third question was just how is the city choosing which lines it's replacing at the moment?
Okay, so the first question, actually, if you could restate that one, I kind of didn't see what you were asking with that.
Well, you're doing an inventory, right? So you're trying to figure out what lines are lead so they can be replaced, is my understanding, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So like there's still ones that are unknown. Like how do I know if my house is, you don't know the composition of it? Like, is there a way that people can find out if they could be submitting like, hey, mine has a lead line, or if you think they have a lead line? Is there a way that people can see that publicly available?
Our record set, no, we don't have our record set up there just because we're going through the process of cleaning it up. Our records are for the private side stuff, not very useful to us or not complete as we'd like them to be. So we wouldn't put the mass of that information out there. If anybody wanted to know what our records stated about their home, they can and frequently do contact us directly, and our water department staff will find that information for them. On that page that shows for the Get the Lead Out, it has a link to that NPR test. And I always circle back to that because it's really well done about how you can identify with just a magnet and a coin what your service line is, and it's really effective. Alternatively, some people have taken photos and sent them in, and we can identify some of it just from sight. That can be a little laborious, and they've got other things they're working on, so that's a little difficult. But to any individual property, I guess to answer your question, can reach out to us, and we'll share the information that we have with them. And as I said before, even if they don't know it, and we come across it while we're doing our inventory, we notify them, we tell them. So does that answer your question for number one?
Yeah, I mean, I might have a follow-up question depending on the answer number 3 as well, but yeah, I think that's good for now, so.
All right, then remind me, what was number 2?
Is there an impact on rates to Royal Oak Water customers for
No,
this?
I'm not part of that conversation, or haven't been, and I don't see that being the case. Our water, despite this being expensive, it's in a good position, the water fund. So I don't see that immediately impacting rates. In particular, we have a lot, but not relatively compared to some other cities, it's not a ton. So it's something that we can swallow relatively easily, I think. But of course, that decision would be left to others as well. But we're not in a position where I would be asking for additional money or raising a red flag about funding. We can do it.
Okay, and then my third question was, how are you prioritizing who gets replacement? And I guess the reason I'm just asking is because if they have to call you to get information on their home, and I don't know how you're prioritizing it, but I'm just trying to see if there's a possibility that it could be low-income ratepayers could be disproportionately not getting access to these services as much as others. So I just kind of wanted to figure out if there's any discrepancies there or not.
So as it stands now, as I said, we're taking them as fast as we can find out where they're at. There's some big holes in our information. So as it stands now, nobody's really had to wait. Everyone's been bringing in. If you can get online and tell me you've got lead, and we can verify that, and you'll get replaced. And so we're not prioritizing. I know there was discussion at one point about trying to say, well, women and children, and then the men said, well, what about us? Like, it's bad for everybody. This isn't good. And we didn't want to be in the business of picking certain types. So we do it, we open it to everybody. Now, in the event that there was such interest, or we had so many access agreements already on hand, people waiting for this to happen, we would likely do it by geography, or to find those efficiencies. It makes it a lot faster, easier, less disruptive to do it that way.
But are you concerned at all that because some of the data is self-reported and brought in, that people that may have less access to technology, or they may not, know about these resources necessarily? Are you concerned that we might be oversampling? We might have better data on higher income households than lower income households, or do you think that's not a concern in this particular case?
No, I could see where that could be the concern. We have, and for that purpose, I guess we have it in different channels. We have it through like print media, digital, television. But to your point, yeah, that's a good valid concern. And on our end, yeah, we got to keep that front and center. I'm not saying we ignored that, but that is a really good point. To that end, I guess the biggest limiting factor might be technology to use the form online, but anybody that reaches out to us, we wouldn't, yeah, I guess access to letting us know, or however, if they have difficulty doing that, I mean, they can call us at any point. Yeah, I guess I don't know how to respond beyond that, but to say that's a good consideration. We will definitely keep that in mind as we consider.
Aaron,
Yeah.
can I just remind people that this community development survey went out? I don't know if you know who all got it. I got it. I'm assuming my neighborhood got it. Did anyone else on the board get this? Some time ago, this door hanger that asked me to check my line to see what it was, and it had the test on it with the coin and the magnet. But so if you got this, you wouldn't have to have a computer. It has a phone. You can do the test, and there's a phone number on it. But I don't know who all this went out to.
That went to the select neighborhoods for, that was from the engineering department as part of water main projects. And I think even on streets where they didn't have it, if they were nearby and they could identify that was an old main, I think they were doing that work. That's very similar to what we will be doing in these neighborhoods where we've noticed some trends. So to that point, then I guess that is another way that we would reach people that might not otherwise know. We are knocking on doors, and we're looking at everybody's record, regardless of what they're, and then to the extent that any record shows anything, any indication of being lead or galvanized, however inaccurate it may be or our confidence in it is, we send them the letter. So long as somebody can get the mail and read it, they've got that too.
Aaron, I got a quick question.
Yep, go ahead.
So I guess from an inventory perspective, then everything we're just talking about, is it really focused on, I think you said roughly the 6,000 that are still unknown? The balance, you're assuming that you have the information, or are you saying that you still would like it to be confirmed? Because I guess my question is what if a homeowner, they know what they have, but they're not sure if you know what they have? Does that make sense? Like, to make your inventory more valid in terms of what you do know is one question. What's how would a homeowner be able to make sure that you have the proper information if you've already inventoried them? And then secondly, for the 6,000 that's left, then the door hanger that Chris just raised, is there a plan to maybe put something like that on those 6,000 addresses to try to get the inventory information?
Yep. And that's why we're going to do it, but we got to do it in kind of bite-sized chunks.
Doing it by neighborhood. Okay, I got it.
Yep. So there was a first part to your question, though.
Yeah, no, so that was, I guess I'm thinking to myself, I just had to have something done. I know that I have a copper service line, but I don't necessarily know if the city knows that if I'm on the inventory of the 10,000 or whatever that you do know. I guess maybe just have a quick discussion around that. Would you have us encourage people to call up to say, if they do know, like myself, to say, hey, I know what I have, I'm just checking with you to make sure that you know what I have as well? Yeah,
that would be good. And that reminds me then, we'll make that point. We did this in the beginning. We asked, that was our first approach on it, is tell us what you have. And unfortunately, people didn't do the effort, and we spent a lot of time chasing our tail because people thought, well, I don't know, what do I have to lose? I'm just going to tell the city I have lead. And we were shocked at how many we had. It was like blatantly copper. The house was built in 1989, and it became difficult, and it really sort of backfired on us.
Gotcha.
So we didn't go out in a formal way, but we were always taking information on. That said, we could revisit it. It would be a good idea to do that very same thing again, do that survey where they send us the information. We would expect to be a little bit more skeptical about whatever we get, but we could temper that a little bit by requiring more photos to be submitted with it or something. Then we get into this technology problem that Andrew was getting at. Short story, we should get back to that, but really caution people, don't just tell us that because you think you get something faster by just, okay, I've got lead, what do I have to lose? We were surprised. I thought, no, who would really do that? And it was, at least the first wave we had like 200 or 300 of these, and about 170, I think the count was, you could look at their record and know when the house was built and know what was there. But we would still go back and verify. So we had some problems with that, but I see the value in that for sure.
Well, I was just wondering how confident you were in the inventory and the accuracy of it, or if
no. So we're not 100%. This is, as we're going through it, we've done our preliminary counts. We know how many unknowns we have. We want to find those, and of course, all throughout we're updating. And anytime there's a new piece of information for a parcel, we update that. So it's continuously getting better. How confident am I in that? I'm not in our numbers that I just rattled off. That's why we're still doing the work we are to really make sure we're solid on that.
Hey, Aaron.
Yep.
One of my friends received a postcard from Michigan Department of Health and Human Services for water testing. How does that differ from what the city's sending? So it's saying free, she just got this week or last week, free water testing for lead in your community. And it's mentioning how they're offering free water testing for a limited number of homes receiving water from your water supply due to an action level exceedance in your community. Are they coordinating with you on this, or how? I don't understand how she got this and why she got this.
No, I have not heard of that. They just must be doing their own community testing for their own purposes, for whatever study they have. I have not been made aware of that. I really wish I would have if they're putting a picture
It'd
out.
be nice of them to tell you.
I know, and I was just curious because she said, do you know how the city's doing it? And I'm like, I don't think this looks like it's from HHS, so I was confused.
Yeah. Now, is it possible, did she participate in the lead testing that we sponsored?
I don't know, I can ask, I don't think she did.
Because that could be the case too, where Eagle gets that information and passes that on, and they're seeking her out because she was a participant in the testing. So, maybe,
Okay.
but no, I have not heard anything.
The other question I had too is the community, when this first came out that we exceeded the levels, whenever that was, a year and a half ago or whenever, it was in the news, and I'm wondering if it wouldn't hurt to have something go in the Royal Oak Review or whatever it's called. Just an update, kind of like what you're giving to us about how many service lines have been replaced, what the pace is expected to be. Just so people know that we're actively working on this as a city, this coordinated effort. It's not costing any extra money as far as we know. I think it would be helpful for people. And like to Andrew's point, especially like the non-digital, sometimes like that's what my mom is always saying. Did you read the review? And, so that's a lot of people go there for their news. So I think if we could do something like that, and then they could highlight it in our email newsletter that goes out every week, I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, we can do that. In fact, when I was strategizing with Judy Davids about this, that very thing came up. We wanted to wait until we had the form up because we were going to generate interest, and the people had led, we wanted to be able to receive that information. But yeah, tell your mom to keep her eye out for the.
I will.
I have a few questions. So, Aaron, just in terms of the inventory database, give us a sense of what that looks like. I mean, does it have all 29,000 addresses in the city of Royal Oak? And and how did you go from 16,000 unknowns to 6,000 unknowns? What method did you use?
Well, we did the first part of your question was, what does our database look like? So that was comprised of, over the years before this action level exceedance had occurred, we always had a gap in the materials on the private side of it. That's really what's at issue here. There is some gaps in the public information we have from the public side, but that was old index cards in a drawer, by street, and address, and we thumb through it. And when they would install a water service back in the day, they'd write it on the card, what we install, because we would install, it could be 3 weeks later that the homeowner's builder would finish building. We would put our copper in mostly up to the service box. And that's why we would have record of that. Other departments at that time would be on site when the inspection was occurring for the connection to the home stuff. And at that time, apparently nobody thought it was that important to get that information out. So the private side information, it was really lacking. But to answer your question, it came from cards to start with. Over years, that was brought into a database. And then as we went into homes, passively kind of to do meter repairs or whatever the case might be, we would update that information. But it was really slow going. It wasn't with any intention. So that's the state of the database.
So it can be sorted and it has every Royal Oak address.
Yes.
Yep. So and then the second part was and just going from 16,000 to 6. Was it phone calls or
no
door sending letters?
So we could look at building department records on things. So a lot of those were doing a little sleuthing work, getting other records that we had access to. Building records. I mean, you can learn a lot just about when a house was built. Now, there's a gray area for some of it. You're thinking, well, they could have still used lead there. We won't assume those, but we could. And I have to ask our analyst what his cutoff date was precisely. But if we have good record, because some houses were rebuilt, and we're concerned with this too. We know that it could be an old house that a new one was built on it, and they preserved the water line. So we don't take that for granted, but we can look at original construction information. And this house was built in the, even around here, I think the state says 86 is when they could have been using lead. Nobody around here was using lead in the ground at 86, not in this part of Michigan. So that's typically kind of the range. That could knock a whole bunch off. But the reason it swung so big is that, you know, the preliminary distribution system inventory, the materials inventory, we hadn't looked at it all. So, I mean, this is, you know, that big swing is just the preliminary, the easy, low-hanging fruit. We have building department data on it. So some of the ones that are starting to remain now are the ones that are going to be, we have to knock, we have to get in, get pictures from the homeowner. So the easy pickings aren't there anymore.
Okay, good. And last year, I recall when you said you estimated last year, the number I have in my head was that there was going to be 1,400 lead lines to be replaced. So now that you've gone through and have done all this detective work, and we've had, you know, all this time for people to, what number are we at?
So we extrapolated that based on the known information we had from being inside of houses and from our records. And that's how we could figure, when we did our preliminary inventory, that's how we figured our various percentages. And that's where we came up with the number 1,400 based on good information that we had, verifiable information. And so far, we're pretty close. We said 1,400. Right now, if I count the lead and galvanized, it puts us actually about 1,500. And that's with what we assume is lead and galvanized. So that number ticked up a little bit, but it's still within that range. We're really comfortable with that. It hasn't swung wildly. So it was like 14, probably almost 1,500. And so I think maybe it swung by 50 or 60, which was, when we saw that gave us a little bit more confidence in how we came up with our preliminary figure anyway. And the reason that preliminary figure matters is that's how the state determines how many you have to replace in a given year based on that preliminary. So we wanted to make sure we had it right because we didn't want to, you know,
So that 1,500 could go up as we go through the 6,000, right?
Yeah, but being what the known stuff that we have now, our analyst doesn't seem to think that will be the case. Thinks that it'll actually, by the time it all settles out, be right in that neighborhood, between 1,400 and 1,500. That's where we're headed.
And now we've had a year. I remember last year you were saying the cost of replacement was going to be like $6,000 to $7,000 a house. What has been the experience now that, you know, we've replaced 100, 140 lead service lines?
They're averaging between $5,000 and $6,000.
And the money comes from it's from the water department.
Yeah, there's a separate fund, the water and sewer fund, which is just, you know, exclusive to the use for maintenance of the water system. That's from water bills and things that funds that and other things. And that's the pot of money that's used for these replacements.
And you mentioned SACRA, so are we like teaming up with other municipalities in terms of contract?
So SACWA, the South Oakland County Water Authority, yeah, they, all the communities had been dealing with a similar thing. There's a lot of lead around. And so we had talked about how do we go about doing this in an organized way? Because everybody's going to be wanting the contractors. And so SACWA, you know, it's similar to what they do for other things. They said, well, let us bid it on your behalf. They are actually the contract holder. We pay SACWA, but they did all of the legwork for coming up with with specifications. It's kind of like an a la carte menu thing. Each house has a specific cost to it, but they're, you know, they're really heavily insured. It works really well, and they work by doing it this way too. They can get commitment from communities on a certain number of houses. And being able to do that, they can dedicate their force to it without risk, you know, to a loss and get these cranked out pretty efficiently. So it works out well, and so far administratively, it's been a breeze.
Wow, sounds good. And yeah, I brought it up before. I wanted to bring it up again tonight in terms of material costs. I mean, I'm learning that copper's 10 times what polyethylene is, and wondering how if they're averaging around 5,000, or 5,500, you know, does any of the bidding take place, you know, using other materials? I've also learned that in the United States, 12% of the houses have polyethylene service lines. So it's not like it's a new thing, or it's not like that, you know, it's been around a while. So could you?
Yeah, so according to the way the SACWA contract is set up, communities have their choice of material, whatever you might want to use or not. We have a strong preference for copper, especially given this, that we are apparently on the hook for private stuff, right? I guess we are taking the tack that if we're going to be, somehow we fear that we're going to be brought into this again in the future. And we fear like that might be more likely the case with plastic. I know it's been around for a while. It's been through testing, but there's water chemistry differences between every area of the country, depending on where you're at. And so I guess I'm personally not that confident in the experience with it that we've had. The savings per house is, yeah, I guess if you look at the unit cost, it can be expensive, but you're talking, at least the math that you sent previously, you're talking maybe $100 some per job. And I don't know if that's worth it. Even if it were triple that, it might not be, because it's a tested material. You mentioned, you know, they had mentioned that a lot of times the plastic does use mechanical fittings. I don't think, I mean, there's copper that's been in the ground for over 100 years and it still works. And it's not, you know what I mean? It's not leaking or degraded to a point where.
Are they welding the copper?
No, we use flared fittings for that. So it's not welded, flared fitting. And to the extent that you can, you get one big stretch of it. It's going to last. It's going to put us on the hook potentially less for maintenance in the future. And we have good, strong track record of it working.
So in terms of, you're the one who's made the decision, and it's just based on the fact that there's some potential concern with polyethylene.
Yep.
And and you're certain that the cost difference is only $100 or so.
No, well, I think I'm using that based on a figure that you had sent out in an email previously about the cost of it. I think you said for 100 feet, it was whatever it was.
$30 versus.
As opposed to 100 and something, right?
185 for copper.
In your average yard, we're talking, it's probably less than 100 feet of copper we're running, because most of these aren't on our side. That's the other thing. Most of the public sides of the water services are copper. So it keeps the materials the same anyway.
And no difference in terms of installation, same method, same in terms of, you know, boring to be able to put in an ethylene pipe versus polyethylene pipe versus a copper tube?
Yeah, it's the same. To the extent they can, they're going to try to bore it or pull it. Either which way. Worst case, they have to excavate a trench. But yeah, you can do that with 1-inch copper as well.
So we can conclude, even if we just said it's a material cost, then, and if it's only 50 feet, you know, then we're talking, you know, roughly, yeah, $140 or something.
Yeah.
So, and we do 100 a year, we're paying 140 extra. Yeah, we're talking $10,000. Not a lot of money.
I feel like it's an insurance policy for the city in the future. Because, you know, at one point in time, everyone thought, what's wrong with lead? They had that same idea. We probably used lead for a while. That's why in the the late 40s, even well, maybe not the 40s, but the 50s, they'd use lead. You know, and it was the same idea. Well, we've used it. It's easy to work with. It works. But then here we are on the hook to replace it. So I don't want to go that route. Plastic, the jury's still out in my view on plastic.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know, 12% of the United States is using it. I would think that, and it's been happening for, you know, at least 3 decades or better. We would know if there was a concern, you know, given this day and age. I think we would, you know, it would be there. We would know about it. The EPA would not, you know, allow such materials to be used.
I disagree.
I'll stand corrected maybe 20 years from now. What?
I disagree with that, because the EPA puts basically they have to be the ones saying what is and isn't okay as far as chemicals, and they don't have the resources to do that. So there's a lot of stuff that's not safe, and PFAS and all of that, that I just don't think plastic is a good option right now.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we have a lead and copper rule, so when we're using copper pipe, I don't know, you know.
But in fairness, I think the building department allows polyethylene service line. And so the
Instead.
homeowner would have the option to do that. In this case, it's the city that's replacing that line, and the city's choice is copper. So I think, Paul, your point's not lost. It's just, I think in this instance, you know, the decision maker is the city that's actually doing the replacement. It's not that the homeowner can't choose plastic if they wanted, if they had their own project to do. If that's maybe a happy medium.
All right, well, I mean, if it's, you know, I mean, we're talking, it's not like it's really big money. If it made a difference of, you know, from 5,000 to 2,000 per house or something, then I think, you know, you really need to, you know, take a look at it. But if we're only talking, you know, a 0.5% difference or whatever, you know, then, you know, no, I have no problem with what's going on. So, okay, very, just one last question in terms of, you know, you talked about 13 parts per billion. Is that the average of the 20 some samples that were taken?
That's the 90th percentile value. So we rank them in order from, I do the math problem, and I know I do it right. It's lowest to highest, and then of the, how do you do the math? It's hard, it's one of the most difficult things to explain is a 90th percentile to somebody, but it's, you rank them in order from lowest value to
Oh, I got it. It clicked.
and then whatever that 90th value, so you find out whatever 90% is that you round up to the next whole
Right.
number, and that would be your position value. Yeah.
So there were a few more that were above the 13. There was 10% that were above the 13.
Yep. And then as a policy, just so you guys know, I mean, if there are any that exceed or have like anything else other than a non-detect in there, we always offer replacements to those that participate. It's sort of self-defeating though, because the state wants us to repeat the same locations for the purpose of lead and copper testing for monitoring these levels. But then we're also encouraged, like, if we find something there, replace it. So that's the tack we're taking. But it makes it very difficult for us to find new candidate locations every time we're required to do a roundup
Yeah, I
test.
wonder why our house got sampled a second time. That
Yeah.
explains it.
Well, that's right. You took part. Thank you, Paul. We appreciate that. Jennifer, I think you had some questions as well.
Sorry, I have more questions.
That's all right.
The biggest one being, I went to your new website, and I noticed some of the old info we used to have out. I can't find it anymore, and I don't know if it's because of the switchover, but it's just more of the general public awareness, like what does lead do to the human body? You know, just that we had some of that information.
It's
out.
romy.gov/lead testing, all one
Okay.
word.
Okay.
And that'll
So it's
flash
not-
you to that page. Now, the problem is, then we were talking about changing up some of the website. We couldn't do too many structural changes on that. We're gonna try to consolidate all of this lead stuff in one spot, because that, a lot of it is focused on the response to the action level exceedance. So
Got it.
it's
Okay.
kind of specific and it's sort of dated almost. There's still good resources on there.
Yeah, I'm just
It's dated and not
wondering-
easy to find.
I'm wondering if, like, now that some of that's dated, we could still have some of that good information
Yes,
out there.
that's the
just
intention.
in general. Yeah, and then, oh, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, I know. So the information that we were going to use for this article, I'm just wondering if there's somewhere on a website that we have these numbers kind of updated on a monthly basis. So people, when they do go see, they can see how many houses have been tested, how many lead lines have been replaced. I noticed that some other cities are doing that. And I think it's just opens up our transparency and communications efforts.
Yeah, so I would love to do that. We can do the updates on the replacements as we do them. I still, not because I don't want to be transparent, but I'm cautious about taking our database of information from each location and just putting it out there because it can be.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
you know what I
Maybe
mean?
just like, right, just like a general numbers update. You might get questions about it, but
No, that's good. That's what we're here for. So that we can do that.
Well, yeah, and if you get more people engaged or you do have more questions, again, it maybe helps to validate that inventory so your confidence level can go up in the known information.
Yep.
I guess I have an observation as opposed to maybe a question. If we're talking about publishing a document in the local newspaper, it might be a good idea to mention some bullet points with regards to concern, like you mentioned, the 1986 cutoff date. If your house hasn't been updated, or was built before this and hasn't been updated, this is something you should look at. And also in the meantime, my house was built in the mid-50s, so I don't even need to look at the pipes to suspect them. Recommend that they get inexpensive water filters for at least their drinking water.
Yeah, that's part of the kind of the standard guidance with the filters.
And then one more comment. I understand not wanting to prioritize to a certain extent, but we might want to you might want to consider that if you have I can't think of an example like this today in Royal Oak, but let's say you had a house with lead service lines that 10 occupants were living in. Obviously the fact that there's more people in a certain property as opposed to another one puts more people at risk. You might want to prioritize it that way if that ever occurs.
Yeah, we did think of these things. Then again, on that house, if you have 10 people living in a house, you have water flowing probably constantly because I can't imagine a time when a toilet's
Good point. Yeah.
something. So you don't even create the condition where you have lead leaching. So, you weigh all that, it gets really into the weeds about how you choose it. But that's, at this stage, our priority is you tell us you've got lead, we'll go replace it.
Okay.
But, that's where we're at now. It'll be a really good problem if we get so many that we have to. Yeah, first of all, it would mean that our work is nearly complete because we have all that information, but and then we get to prioritize. But I guess it's not a problem yet.
To that point, though, I'm assuming that you are prioritizing known childcare facilities.
Yeah, and those typically don't have lead because if it's a commercial business, they're usually larger than your average 1-inch residential. So what was used there was either ductile iron, like small diameter ductile iron pipe, or copper generally, because you're talking 1.5 inch service or bigger.
Yeah.
Typically copper.
Yeah, what about home care, child care centers?
It would be the same through our inventory as any other residence. So.
Okay.
Well, that's it on the, if there's no other questions about that, and we don't have anybody from oh, you know what we do? We have some attendees. Janice is here. Let's see. Let me check the chat really quick. Hi, Janice. We're at the public comment section of the meeting. Did you have anything you'd like to contribute to the Water System Advisory Council meeting? All right. Hang on. Sorry, I got to figure this out. Did I?
She's muted.
Yeah, that's she's muting herself, but I just want
Yeah.
to make sure I can get her back into the attendee thing without accidentally booting her out of here entirely. Okay, I think this is it. Janice, I'm sorry if I knock you out with this. Uh-oh, I did.
Oh.
Oh, no. Okay. It's all right. We can let her back in. She's got the link. All right. Well, that was public comment. Any other discussion on that? Otherwise, entertain a motion to adjourn this portion of the meeting.
I move to adjourn.
And I second.
All right. So we'll call for the vote. Ms. Acevedo,
yes.
Commissioner Douglas,
Yes.
Mr. Gantino,
Yes.
Ms. Hartwig,
Yes.
Ms. Herzog,
Yes.
Ms. Lemmy,
Yes.
Mr. Marcelletti,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Sarpalis,
Yep.
and Mr. Vile.
Yes.
Okay, well, we're now back into the regular scheduled programming of the Environmental Advisory Board. So we're at public comment for the Environmental Advisory Board. I see Janice is back.
Yes. Hi, Janice.
I'm just watching today, just
Oh, okay. I
listening.
apologize. Didn't mean to booze you out there.
It's all right.
Oh, well, welcome. Okay, so Aaron, back to you for the Director of Public Service and Recreation report.
I have nothing else to add. I think I've droned on enough for you guys for one night, except to say that it dawned on me, I don't know why I haven't done this before, but we get regular updates from SACRA with their recycling tonnage reports and things. And I'm going to start including that as backup when I get those for our subsequent meetings. It's really
Okay,
good.
great.
But that's all I've got.
Okay, that would be great. Okay, on to item 9, Energy and Sustainability Manager Report, Julie Lyons-Bricker.
Thank you. Aaron, can I share my screen, please?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, see, I don't know if you can trust me to try to figure this stuff out. You know what? It doesn't give me that. Oh, wait a minute.
Mhm.
Bear with me.
I think if you go down to the green share screen and
I think I got it.
hover
Here,
or
Jane,
click it.
you got it?
Yeah, I try it. Try it
Oh,
now,
yeah.
Julie.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, all right, great. So one of the exciting things is on Monday, the goals and objectives were approved by the City Commission, including a goal number 8, which we took on last year as the small section for sustainability, but it separated sustainability out of another goal and gave it its own place. And so here this year, or for this coming year, 2021 to 22, this is the expanded goal number 8. So it still talks about completing the sustainability plan, but it also has 2 additional objectives: implementing sustainable priorities once we get to that point, and then implementing sustainable priorities for city assets, so municipal operations. And so this is really exciting for me to see that most of what was put together in the strategy planning session with the commissioners and staff stayed on and was organized in this way and then approved without any changes. So you all can find, I don't know where the approved version of this will sit because it was just approved on Monday, but if you want to look at it right now, it is part of the commission's agenda, which sits under the agenda and minutes section under government on our website. And if you can't find it, just let me know. I'd be happy to give you the link. So let's see, the second thing I wanted to talk about was a couple months ago, there was a conversation about the PACE program in Royal Oak. And I was able to have a meeting with the Lean and Green PACE group, which services our area and probably most of Michigan, actually, Lean and Green, Michigan. And they said they would be more than happy to come to one of our meetings and give a quick presentation so that you all can understand the PACE format. And one thing I did find out is that PACE really is for commercial buildings and multifamily. So that led me to think, how do we help our residents move forward with energy issues, either energy efficiency or renewables? And then another nonprofit well, actually, I shouldn't say another nonprofit. A nonprofit, Michigan Saves, has been around for I think 10 years now, and they are a great resource for helping residential and commercial organizations move forward on projects like that. So I wonder from the group, would you all like to have a presentation of those two together or separately or one or the other? Because they both would be willing to come and give a quick conversation. And then also both would be happy to support us in our sustainability planning process. So when we get to the point where we break out into work groups based on the focus topics like energy, they could come and speak directly to the people who are, really going to dig into that focus topic.
I'd love to hear from Pace. Yeah.
Okay. As EAB first, because, part of our task with this sustainability plan and being, part of the community engagement and outreach is that, we help move along this education piece. And it probably, in my mind, makes more sense for us to have the general gist of these programs before we go out in any way to the public. Does that make sense to you all also?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So that said, could we donate a half hour or like 30 to 40 minutes to the two of them, either in March or April or?
Sure.
Okay. Do you have
Yeah,
a preference?
I guess I was going to say I definitely want to hear from both, but I would almost prefer, if it makes sense, to have them on separate meetings.
Yeah.
Only because, I want to make sure that we're able to dedicate our full attention and from a schedule standpoint, but also our attention to each of them, because I think your point is very well made. I'd like to understand them to the best extent possible and to allow them the sole presentation spot on a particular meeting, I think would be better. But at the same token, that means it's 2 months out in terms of being able to hear from one of them. So that's my preference, but if we want to hear from both of them in the same night, I think whatever amount of time we allocate is beneficial.
Okay, yeah, and honestly, I could go either way because I think there's an argument for, separating them out or having them together. And one thing I think about having them together is, in general, each of the potential programs that someone might want to move forward with will almost be a case-by-case basis. So what PACE and Michigan Saves could do for us is give us the general overview. What is the financing type? Where do they get the money? How does it, how do we pay it back? That kind of thing. But anything more than that really is based on the particular project. So in that case, we're not going to get super into the weeds. That said, the quick presentation they gave me was about 30 minutes long, and that's just PACE. So, but they also had some case studies of different projects they worked on, including one in Pontiac for a theater, which was kind of cool. So I'll leave it up to you all to make a decision. I'm sure we could do PACE in March and Michigan Saves in April, or flip-flops.
I support doing that. I would like to say that, this stuff is very technical, so if I'm wrong about anything, I apologize. But my understanding is that there is a financing gap to some degree between those two programs. PACE serves commercial entities and can be rolled into taxes, I believe, or it can be on a bill there. And Michigan Saves works through private financing, and there's like an interest rate and people have to pay back. But my understanding is people who are residential who have bad credit, or especially like low-income homeowners who pay a disproportionate amount of their energy bill, to purchase home heating and to purchase electricity more than the average household. They can't get access to either of these programs. And so I'm wondering if we could either bring in somebody who could tell us maybe a little bit about what's being done in other places to address this financing gap might be helpful. Or if we could have the PACE people talk about what the impacts would be if they could expand state law to include residential projects, and like, should that be something we should be advocating for, or like what would the impact be on expanding renewable energy? I'm just wondering if we could kind of address that point when we reach out to some of these folks.
Yeah, so I think the question to PACE could certainly be asked, have they considered, moving into the residential sector? Whether or not that would erase the gap, I have no idea, right? So about Michigan Saves, if you know there's a gap and work that you're doing and other people make that very clear, maybe you could help me by understanding how is that gap being remedied in other places, to give a starting point for us to look into. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I could look into it a little more.
Okay. Have you heard of any other cities or any other states where they've been able to remedy the gap?
Illinois has been doing a lot lately, and I haven't looked into it recently, but they're doing a lot of low-income solar on projects on the south side of Chicago, and but they have a very supportive state. Like I said, a lot of people have come to me about PACE, and they've said, PACE should be residential too, and I say that's a great idea, but it's state law. They have to change it. They can't do it, is my understanding. So in Illinois, they don't have that constraint, and they financed a couple of projects with, I think, homeowners that would otherwise have really bad credit through, or wouldn't be able to qualify for private loans through Illinois Solar for All. So I could reach out and see if I could pull some information on that, and that might help us answer that question.
Okay. Yeah, if we could talk about this offline, if you want to just give me some tips, I'll certainly look into it.
I think it's a great question to ask both groups when they come in, though, because they know the markets that they serve and can't serve, and the reasons why, and get their opinion on how they would try to serve that underserved market that they're not touching.
Okay, so do we want to split these up and see if PACE can come in March and Michigan Saves in April?
Yep.
Sounds good to me.
Let's move forward with that.
Okay, and then the next item I have is about the Soul Smart membership that I talked about. We have formally signed on, and Soul Smart is that group that is with the Solar Foundation, and they have a designation program where your city can be considered a Soul Smart city if you earn enough points doing things from their like checklist to make it as easy as possible for residents and others to move forward with solar installations. And so I've been working with the rep that is assigned to us, and we've taken care of the first prerequisite, and now the task is to go through the whole checklist and see where we are, whether we already accomplished some of those, so we have points, stacked up already, and then the second piece would be to figure out which points we want to move forward on, and then move to accomplish those, and then submit certification request. And then let's see, the last item is from ICLEI. Again, that is the nonprofit that had the software for us when we did the greenhouse gas inventory. They have just rolled out a number of new resources and pulled resources from other places. And so I'm working with our rep right now to understand what are those new resources and how might they be appropriate for where we are right now, and what benefits we can pull. All of these things just come with our membership, so there's no cost to us. And perhaps in March, I'll have more to talk about, relative to which pieces might be helpful to the work that we're doing right now. And then just general sustainability stuff, webinars, making meetings and et cetera. And then also the last thing for the sustainability general work, Oakland County called and asked if we could have a meeting, and it's scheduled for this Friday at 9 a.m. To have a conversation about where Royal Oak is with our sustainability stuff. And I'm going to push, the conversations that we've had together about really needing the support from Oakland County. And so if any of you would like to join me on this meeting, I would be happy to have you. Again, it's Friday at 9 o'clock a.m. Just let me know. It's a Zoom call. And if you can't make it, but you want to be sure that I mentioned something, just drop me an email. Okay?
This Friday at 9?
This Friday at 9.
All right, I'll be there.
Okay, send me an email and I can forward you the Zoom link. Okay, and that's what I have for the first part. Thank you.
Great. Okay, and then on to City Commissioner report. Shar.
Thanks, Amanda. A couple things going on. City Hall is now open. It has limited hours. Check the website. I don't know what exactly. I know it's like Tuesday. I don't know the exact dates, but if you do have business to transact, you need to go to the treasurer's office. You need to go to the building department. You can actually walk in the building. You can walk through and see the beautiful ceramic mural that we commissioned. You can see the stunning city commission chambers, which I'm anxious to sit in someday really soon, but don't know when that'll be. Anyway, and the police station is open also. Our police officers are beside themselves over their new digs. And again, I wish we could schedule tours, but COVID being what it is, those are a ways off. I'll mention something that Julie and I are involved with. This is the Royal Oak Civic Foundation. She wears multiple hats with the city, one of which is the executive director of the Royal Oak Civic Foundation. And maybe I'll stop here. How many of you have heard about the foundation's food insecurity campaign? Not enough, I'll talk. Oh, Julie's going to jump in here. So the Civic Foundation was created by the City Commission to raise funds for city programs, certainly, planting trees, the animal shelter, the library, etc., but also to address broad community needs as well. And with a gift from the Robertson brothers, who are building the homes out by Normandy Oaks Park, we are matching up to $7,500 that is raised by 3 food insecurity organizations: Blessings in a Backpack, the Open Hands Pantry, and the Salvation Army. So if you go to the page that Julie has displayed here right now, it's romy.gov/ROCF. You will see links where you can join, you can donate to one of these charitable organizations. The campaign ends March 1st. So if you're going to give soon. And then we will match up to a total of $7,500 that they have raised. So net effect is $15,000 to address food insecurity here in Royal Oak. Changing gears, marijuana applications. We had 37 applications, mostly retail, a few micro business and some industrial uses. The city clerk's office is vetting those applications. There's a timetable by which they have to notify applicants if their application is sufficient or not, after which the city manager looks at them, after which the planning commission looks to see if they meet the zoning requirements. So Woody and I will be mulling that over in the very near future, after which the city will allow up to 2 retail establishments and 2 micro businesses. Think of a micro business as a micro brewery. They sell what they grow. And of those, one of each of those can be in general business zoning. Right now, most of our general business zoning is along Woodward. There is a small pocket of it recently approved on the southeast corner of Stevenson and 12 Mile. And again, Woody is nodding vigorously over that because we approved that as zoning just here recently at the Planning Commission. As I won't go over what Julie said about the city setting or affirming rather its goals and objectives for the coming year. I will say that I was on a panel with Julie and Aaron and the city manager, and anything Julie wanted, she got. So, and last but not least, we have narrowed, we're hiring a city attorney, and we've narrowed our list of applicants to 6 and are trying to set a date where we will conduct preliminary interviews with those 6. Their names have not been released yet, pending their notification to their existing employers. But it looks like sometime in mid-March, we'll conduct our first round of interviews with city attorney candidates. We may or may not have a second round of interviews with finalists narrowed down from that list. But those are the fun, exciting things going on at Sitcom these days. Got any questions? I see no hands. So, Madam Chair, carry on.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, now to item 11, Community Garden Work Group. Tom.
Thanks, Amanda. I'll dump this in the chat just in case people want links to stuff, but it's growing much faster than I would have anticipated. We probably got about 100 people who have expressed interest. We got them all plotted out on a map. If you want to do that, click that map link. I started a Google Doc just to sort of record everything that's happened. I'm not really sure what to tell people next. My thinking is we'd want to go ahead and start some kind of site suggestion committee, people that would just go around town, look for places that would make likely sites. And then I guess Aaron just left. I needed to ask Aaron really what he's prepared to do. Here he comes. I wasn't really sure haven't told anybody anything concrete yet. I did, caution people that whatever we suggest is just a suggestion, that the city's going to decide what we actually can do. But as far as the next step, I'm really not sure. There are definitely a lot of interested people, and there's a lot of different ways we can skin this cat. We had examples at our first meeting from the Ferndale Good Neighbor Garden and the Troy Community Garden. They're just as different as night and day. There's another one in Pleasant Ridge, which is quite different. And, whatever we do in Royal Oak will be different again.
And we've had, Tom's had 2 meetings so far. The last one was on Monday, and it had 44 participants on a Monday night. Some big highlights. I'm stealing your thunder, Tom. But GM can donate pallets for raised beds. So that would be a cost reduction. Is it Eric Brown? Could donate land and then possibly some money. And then you had someone that could do some free labor too, right?
Yeah, Eric Brown owns Urbane Apartments. And I worked with him some years ago on the biking stuff. He's a man of his word. If he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. And he was really excited by it. He's really big on making, assisting in making Royal Oak a pleasant place to live for people who live in apartments, and he's interested. And then Nick Foster Moritz, he runs the Nick Handyman service. I guess they did something for Royal Oak, those tow operated doors. That was one of his inventions, but he volunteered to donate labor to like wire up solar lighting and build the raised beds and fencing and so on and so on. He offered to donate free labor. So we definitely got some offers from people on the table if we decide to pull the trigger.
Tom, I got up to run to make a note to put a little placeholder for some bit of an ask for this pending it fleshes out. And I didn't want to forget, and I got my whiteboard, that's why I got up to write it. But you mentioned something about the potential of somebody donating land. What's the
He's really busy. I haven't not been able to pin him down on what he meant, but he sought me out. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm gonna try to get the definitive answer on that this week and find out.
we had a lot of ideas, and that was always the central problem. Where's the location? Where do you find a place to do it? So that'd be great.
Should we tell people to go ahead and look at places around town they think might make a good garden, and then we come back and suggest them to you? Is that the point we're at?
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, I think that's kind of like the idea of the big group. Ultimately, that would be one of the products of these initial meetings, is that we would have some better idea of locations, because that really drove everything else.
There
So,
was a,
so Tom, I was one of the ones that volunteered to be on the site selection committee for this, but I do have some questions as far as, initially I was thinking that we would be picking a city-owned site, but several people have mentioned school sites, and I know this is preliminary, but if the city agrees to go ahead and build a fence and provide water, and yeah, I think having it on a school site is going to complicate things. So I don't want to steer people the wrong way, but
let's find out. I don't see any reason to exclude school sites at this point. We don't know what's going to happen. We
okay,
might find a really good spot on school land and work everything out. Yeah, I don't
okay.
see any
Well,
need to censor ourselves,
well,
But
no,
Chris,
that's what I just wanted to know, is that that's not going to be a problem then if the city is asked to provide materials for school property.
I can't imagine it would be a problem, I guess.
Not if it were for a city function or for the benefit of the public, be a permitted expenditure. I don't think, nothing directly. I mean, there would be certain circumstances where it wouldn't be an appropriate use of funds, but not what you just described.
Okay, well, that's what I wanted to know, because if I'm helping part of the group that's looking at sites, I don't want to rule anything out initially, but I just was wondering, is it viable to consider school sites? So if it is, fine.
Yeah, considering the city and the school district occupy almost identical territories, I don't think there'd be much of a conflict there. But
Yeah, I
Char
think
was
at this
waving her
point,
hand.
you don't exclude anything, but at the same token, as you're doing your analysis, the ones that are much less viable for whatever reasons are going to quickly, fade out from consideration. But I agree with Tom. In the outset, you can't really exclude anything.
But
Yeah,
Char,
just add, knowing how public entities work, how government works, you've already got your foot in the door here with the city, and you've got a spring growing season that's 6 weeks away. Getting the schools to even spend time to consider it, let alone say yes, I think is daunting. I would say focus on city-owned property, or if Eric Brown has properties, I don't know what he's got, but I would say focus on city property. I think that's going to be your fastest route to success.
Well, to tell you the truth, that's exactly what I was thinking. I think the schools have enough on their plate with COVID and kids coming back. And I just think it's not a good time. If this program is very successful and we want to expand it in future years, I think school sites would be, some school sites would be great. But I think initially it's not a good time to ask them to do anything more than they have to do right now.
let's wait and see what happens. They wouldn't have to do anything. I mean, let's wait and see what happens. I wouldn't want to exclude anything at this point. But yeah, it sounds like that's what I'll do then. Well, we've got a good sized email list. I'll just send it out saying, yeah, here's the people that volunteered for the site selection committee so far. Does anybody else have any ideas? We'll start compiling notions for locations, and I guess I'll run them by Aaron, and then we'll go from there.
And I won't be the final decision. I mean, it would be as a group, but I mean, I would definitely want to take a first glance at it and see if anything jumps out that would be an issue. But
then I guess going in the future, we'd have to decide. I mean, the big question is, what kind of governing structure do we want? How much city time do you want to spend on this? And there's wildly different models for that, like the Ferndale Good Neighbor Community Garden, completely privately run. They get help from the city, but there's no governance from the city. Whereas the Troy Community Garden is completely run by a Troy staff person who happens to live in Royal Oak, Nikki McEachern. And then there's different ways in between. And I was talking to the guy that runs the Pleasant Ridge thing, and he says, oh, they pretty much run themselves. I never have to bother with them. And that's there's a bunch of different ways of skinning that cat.
Yeah, that was an interesting meeting. I have a question. I forget which group it was, said, make sure you have access to bathrooms. That never occurred to me before. Like, are there going to be people on site that long where we would need that? And if so, we might want to make sure that's listed on our locations. And I know we need access to water, but
The older you get, the more important those bathrooms get to you. I tell you that.
yeah, I am not a gardener, so I don't know how long people would plan to be there and help out and all that jazz. So yeah.
I think
I
that was
think that was the Troy
operation.
one,
Yeah.
and they
Oh.
were more focused around seniors. So
I just
Got
want to say, you got to go before you grow.
That's the sign that we'll put on it.
But right now I'm I'm an old union organizer and community organizer. Right now I'm assuming I'm organizing people to become a relatively self-governing unit, and then if that changes, just let me know and I'll back off that. But that'll be my assumption going in, that we want people to have ownership and a sense of responsibility for it. And so we'll try to organize it that way.
Plus it's easier to get forgiven than it is to get permission.
But that's all I had. That's my report. Yeah.
I will say, Tom, time is a little bit of the essence in the sense, whether it's a city-owned site or a private site, like getting the final, green light go ahead to start putting a shovel in the ground is going to take a little bit of time, and we're quickly approaching the planting season, right? So I think we do need to narrow the focus and sort of narrow down some choices, at least for maybe a smaller initial pilot version of what we want to accomplish rather quickly, just to try to be as effective as we can with our time this spring.
Yeah, it would be good to get something going this spring.
Okay. Anything else for this? All right, on to the next. Sustainability Plan Group. Julie.
Okay, let's see, am I, I'm not muted. Okay, thank you, Amanda. So the sustainability plan has now been formally named the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan. So that's the term that we're going to use moving forward. And on the work group that is in place right now, that was one of the items that we solved 2 times ago. We continue to meet about every 2 weeks. And one of the major tasks we have right now is working on the scope of the plan to encourage community outreach and engagement for the development of that sustainability and climate action plan, which we're also going to call SCAP for short. So that's the new acronym that we have. A couple things, that are scope items are how to shape the open houses, what we want to get from the focus topic work groups, how do we build the task force, that helps oversee all of these pieces. So, we've worked on a few of those so far. We have another meeting next week, and we'll continue to focus on those items. And also there's a desire to start building out the timeline so we can be a little more clear about, when things are coming. And it may mean that we're going to work backward, knowing that our deadline to have the sustainability and climate action plan completed is January 31st of 2022. So that may be how we move forward. And I think probably in March, there will be some more details worked out through this work group. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to Paul. Thanks to Paul, we have a new member on that work group. Her name is Paula Martinez Mante. And Paul, I don't know if you have a quick elevator blurb for Paula, how you met her and what she brings to the table.
Tom could probably speak to her as well. She was the vice president of the Royal Oak, Greater Royal Oak Democratic Club, and she's also been very active in the Indivisible Fighting Nine, and she's co-founder of the statewide Indivisible organization they were calling SWIM. I'm trying to think what the M is. So Michigan, statewide Indivisible Michigan. So she's very involved in community organizing, and so it's been great to have her working with us on sustainability and climate action planning and community engagement.
Yeah, so thank you, Paul. And that's basically what I have for the sustainability plan. We're chugging away.
Did you want to read the mission statement? We finished that.
Let me see if I can pull that out. I might not be able to because it's on my work computer and I'm remotely.
You mean you haven't
Do you have
memorized it,
it?
Julie? Oh,
Darn it! I knew I was forgetting something.
So next time.
Yeah, I can't easily pull it from this my work computer. How about you, Paul, or anyone else? Do you have it handy? Woody?
I do not. I was just thinking to myself, we'll share it next time because we'll have a lot of
Okay,
other
we'll share it next time.
additional and better information to share with it. So it'll be a much better show then.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, on to the last other updates and discussion. We were going to have a recycling event in the spring, but we've decided that we'll just push that to the fall and have one because there's a lot of other recycling events going on at that time. So during the spring.
Including June 12th, we had the Sakura-wide event, the Household Hazardous Waste and Electronics event. That'll be at the high school again on Lexington. So on account of that, though, we let's think about this in advance of our next meeting. They haven't even said anything about, hey, do any communities want to do any of it? So we'd have our pickup dates, pickup Saturdays in the fall, because Sakura hasn't even approached the other communities about it. So we can talk about that next time. What? That's it.
Okay.
Will the EAB be a volunteer at the June 12th event like last year?
They will take all volunteers they can get.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be cool if we did it as a collective group as best we could.
Any other items that anyone wants to discuss?
I'd like to make an announcement that, and nothing's for sure yet, but the Oakland County Climate Campaign that I'm a part of is anticipating a potential first large vote on funding some environmental initiatives at the county on March 25th. I think we're going to try and want people to be there in public comments. So I would say look out for more information from me and check the county website. It's very easy to give a public comment now because it's all online. You can just call in at 6, and usually within 15 minutes you can kind of give your comment. But as we heard from Julie, they're looking at providing a lot of support to cities. So they're meeting with cities right now. It sounds like to figure some of that stuff out. And so I think it behooves us as a commission, as well as the other environmental commissions in the area, to really push for a strong plan. So just keep your eyes peeled for that information.
Great. Anyone else? All right, I guess that do you think Janice may have any comments after our meeting?
Let's see. I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay.
I can ask anyway.
Would you have to open public comment again, though?
I just want to feel very transparent.
Well, I appreciate you keeping, inviting me, but I'm just listening this time. Thank
All
you.
right.
Okay,
Have a good
great.
night,
great.
Janice.
You too.
All right, so is there a motion to adjourn then? Because that will
I
wrap, oh,
move.
our next meeting will be March 24th, same time.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Acevedo,
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas,
Yes.
Mr. Guntina,
Yes.
Ms. Hartwig,
Yes.
Ms. Herzog,
Yes.
Ms. Lemmy,
Yes.
Mr. Marcelletti,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Sarpalis,
Yes.
Mr. Vile.
Yes.
All right, it's been a great meeting. See you
Have a
next
good
time.
night, everybody.
Have a good night, guys.
Everyone,
Bye.
take
Bye.
care.
Bye.